The college football playoff rankings.
Welcome back.
Latest edition just dropped, and we are
Nice.
hopping on DJ Hours After Dark edition, like 3 or 4 now. I don't know what it is.
3.
But edition 3 of the playoff rankings, and we're just going to react to them right away. So it just dropped. We're looking at the list, and we want to give our initial thoughts. Mike, I want to just hear what you thought right away. It was pretty similar to the AP poll.
Yeah, it's pretty pretty similar. Nothing really too egregious or controversial. I guess
They kept Alabama outside the top 12.
Thank God.
Which was,
I mean, thank God. Please just get the. I hope Auburn beats Bama in the Iron Bowl, and then just they're done. They're out of the
entire
conversation.
country's hoping that, and anyone who wants Kalen DeBoer fired probably also wants that.
True. Also, kind of a big week for you guys if you want. You would be a big Vandy fan. Get Tennessee out, and then that would probably swap your place in.
Well, there's a couple
first
ways
team
for
out.
Clemson, but yeah, you're looking at the rankings just next to us on the screen here now. But we
really
can
quick, one last
yeah,
thing.
go ahead.
One last thing is I thought it was interesting how high they propped up UNLV because putting them as a ranked team now props up Boise State when they, I assume they're going to win in their championship game.
They play each other, right?
Well, yeah, they're destined to
And say they'll play each other again. So I don't know if UNLV will end a ranked win if they lose again.
Oh, yeah, because it's all at the very end what it means, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I
Okay,
guess if Boise loses to UNLV, then Tulane's probably the one that gets in over UNLV. But yeah, really no change in the top 4 from last week, right? You got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been watching the channel, you know my thoughts on Penn State.
Yeah.
I think it's egregious that they've just stayed in the top 5 somehow the entire season.
They just love the Big Ten.
They have
this
one
year.
ranked win, and it's against 23 Illinois. The rest of their season was a cakewalk, and then they lost a home game to Ohio State, which again, tough game, but they really haven't proved it. But you kind of always go back to you can't blame a team for their schedule. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of what they're doing here. Notre Dame at 5. I mean, it looks like they might get the most favorable spot in the playoffs with the 5 seed.
Yeah, I still hate excusing or forgiving the NIU loss. It's the worst loss out of any team. I think it's the worst loss out of any team on the entire list. And
Probably.
how do you excuse that? That's
I think it's
not
just 'cause it
something
was-
that you can just pass over.
What was it, week 2?
Yeah,
early
but
in the season. Since then they've really
a loss
blown
is
up.
a loss. And
Yeah, but we know the way at college football works. Losses in early September carry far less weight than losses, later in
it's
the
a new
season.
team.
Exactly. And they just played a ranked
fair.
Army, won 49-14. When they played Navy, they were ranked 51-14. When they played Louisville when they were ranked, won by 7, and they played A&M on the road and won by 10.
But okay, look, besides A&M, you expect them to beat Army. You expect them to beat Navy. The only reason that it was
They're a good
actually
team.
a
That's
fun
why.
matchup
That's why you
is-
expect it.
But they're a good team in regards to, the teams that they actually usually play against and would have a regular season record against. But
I don't know.
When they have these weird, okay, we're undefeated in the All-American Conference,
Well, they pretty much play an ACC schedule. Preseason, Florida State was slated to be an extremely hard game because Florida State, everyone knows, was top 10.
I was talking more Army and Navy though, because that's what made them a good matchup,
Sure.
right? Is
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they were good in regards to their.
Sure, but I'm just saying, Notre Dame's going to probably end the season 11-1. Mm-hmm. In no world does 11-1 not get you in the playoffs, unless you're maybe Indiana, which I kind of want to get to, because it's interesting. They like we said, Notre Dame's at 5. They have Miami at 6, as to where the AP poll had Miami at 8. That's actually the only change in the top 12 between AP and college football, or the playoff poll. Miami's at 8 in the AP poll, which kind of showed the AP voters were saying, if Miami loses in the conference championship, they can slide out. The college football playoff committee has them above Georgia and Tennessee. So that kind of tells me if they lose to what's a 9 seed
cushion.
SMU, I don't think a second loss will push them out, which is kind of a bummer for Clemson. We really do need a little bit of help, I think, unless they do something interesting with Indiana. But yeah, so they have Georgia at the 7, Tennessee at the 8. I think both these teams are in unless they lose.
Yeah, I don't know. In my personal opinion, I think when we talked about it yesterday, everybody on the panel, I kind of kept my mouth shut, but I don't think that Tennessee Vandy game is super walk away easy for Tennessee. I mean, their defense is solid, but I mean, Vandy's been able to put points against most teams. And I mean, even if you watch that LSU game last week, I mean, they lost by 7, but they were playing well. Their offense was moving, and personally, I just don't think it's going to be as chalk walk away with it.
Maybe
as people.
It
think.
is an 11.5 point spread, so Vegas does think it's kind of a walk away spot. But yeah, Vandy has been a difficult place to play for ranked teams. So
yeah,
100% if Tennessee loses that game, they're done. But if they win, I mean, they don't have another game to play. They're not going to be in the conference championship. Mm-hmm. They're pretty much just slated in there. Then after Tennessee at 8, you have SMU at 9, like we mentioned. SMU is an interesting one, right? Because let me pull up their schedule right here. They have the ranked win over BYU, or the ranked loss, sorry. Their only loss is to a ranked BYU. Mm-hmm. And then they don't have a ranked win this season. So this will come down to how heavily they weight making the conference championship and losing. Mm-hmm. Because say they go 11-1, right, with 0 ranked wins, but get to the conference championship, play a Miami that's like a 6 or a 5 seed when they play, and then lose. So Miami, they get the bye, they're the conference champion, all that. They have 12 wins. SMU sitting there at 11-2. What do you do with that team against, an Indiana team, a Clemson team, if Clemson beats South Carolina, which we'll get to in a second. But they'll both have 2 losses. One of them made the conference championship, but they just haven't beat anyone all season, and any ranked opponent they play, they lose to.
Yeah, I mean, but you're saying if Clemson were to win against South Carolina?
Say Clemson wins against South Carolina.
So then I would say that they have a better win than any other SMU win.
For sure.
And so I would put them in over.
Yeah, no, I agree with that sentiment. But SMU, would have finished undefeated in conference play and have made the conference championship to play that extra game. So you're semi-penalizing them for making the conference championship. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the inverse of what I think is going on with Indiana. They're getting really rewarded for not making the conference championship. I mean, right below SMU, they have Indiana at 10. Indiana hasn't beat a ranked team. We know this. They've been blowing out bad teams. They played actually the easiest Big Ten schedule. They played all the bottom of the conference.
For sure.
And then the one ranked game they play, they get absolutely blown out by Ohio State. So they're going to end the season 11-1, not make their conference championship, but have no real wins. So also having Clemson at 12 right there, 2 spots behind them, if Clemson beats South Carolina, who they have ranked inside the top 15, I wouldn't be surprised if they move us above Indiana and Boise State.
I think it would be deserving because especially, and also what I said yesterday is, if Indiana wins this game by anything less than 20 points, I think they deserve
the Purdue game, right?
The Purdue game. I think they deserve to be out because, again, you have Indiana in the seeding for the past 3 weeks as high as they were because of how dominant and efficient their offense was looking. And then if you look at their past 5 weeks, 4 weeks or whatever, their offense has slowed down tremendously. And so again, if they continue to do that against a team that's unranked like Purdue, really, really bad team who they should be able to make a statement against, you don't deserve it.
And I know Indiana, I know the schedule, they don't get to choose their own schedule, but their conference games being UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, and then what was supposed to be a hard Michigan game, what turned into obviously an easy Michigan game. Mm-hmm. We know, and they only won that game by 5. And then a blowout loss to Ohio State and finishing it with Purdue, one of the worst teams in college football. One of the most fortunate draws of the schedule I think you could ever see.
Hey, them in Texas.
And then, Boise State, very true. Boise State obviously controls their own destiny. They're probably going to match up with UNLV again. And, if they beat them like they did earlier in the season, they're going to be in as the non-Power 4 team.
100%.
And then, you have the Clemson-South Carolina game, the 12-15 seed matchup this week, which feels like it's a playing game.
Yeah.
It really feels like it's a playing game for the at-large bid there. I love seeing Alabama outside the top 12.
Oh, it's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I'm so desperate for Auburn to pull out an Iron Bowl upset here.
I honestly don't even think it matters. There's no 3-loss teams currently inside the top 12, which is how it should be.
I agree.
It's how it should be.
They don't deserve it.
I think you'll end up getting a 3-loss team outside the top 12. Like, for example, inside the top 12, say Georgia plays Texas in the championship and loses and Texas wins, they're not kicking out a 9-4, or sorry, it'd be what? A 10-4 Georgia. Or 10-3 Georgia. I don't know why my math is so wrong on that. But I think they just stay in. If the SEC, the 2 people that play in the SEC championship are going to be in.
Man, I don't really understand why. No, I guess
why
I do.
What?
why Georgia's so high, but then it's because they beat Texas.
Not only that,
but I mean,
they beat Clemson, which is a top 12 win. They beat Texas, which is a top 3 win, and then they beat Tennessee, which is a top 7.
But then they
win.
lost to unranked Kentucky, and then not
they
to
beat Kentucky.
Who they lose to?
They just lost to Bama and Ole Miss, both ranked.
Oh,
both inside the top 15.
Oh yeah, no, that's
so no.
Yeah,
Georgia to me has like one of the strongest schedules. They beat multiple highly ranked teams. 3 teams currently slated inside the top 12.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many other teams in the country that can say that.
No, that's true.
I think maybe 0 teams in the country that can say that.
I stand corrected. They also have by and large the hardest schedule for anybody.
For any
for
of the
them
teams
to have 10 wins is
for sure
insane.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. I think this is probably the best rankings they had. I had very few issues with it. The one thing I'm just going to keep harping on, though, that's kind of a bummer. You know, if a team loses one game, they're basically going to be in.
Yeah.
But I just think, which is, I guess, how it should be. That's the whole purpose of the 12-team playoff, I guess, is to let teams with easier schedules just duke it out and play it. But I really like the fact that Penn State, you know, hasn't really beat anybody, lost to Ohio State. It was a home game against Ohio State, and is at 4. Like, I feel like they should be around Indiana. They have the same metrics. They have the same amount of wins. They both lost to Ohio State. Indiana got blown out in Ohio State. Penn State lost multiple score game at home to Ohio State. Like, how is that team the 4?
If you have an issue with Penn State being 4, then you have an issue with Texas being 3.
Not necessarily, though.
Because our loss is at home against Georgia, who's lower than Ohio State.
Yeah, but you still had a much harder schedule. Like the teams,
I agree with that. So I think I think we deserve it because I think the SEC and conference play is harder than
100%. If you look at who Penn State played, none of these teams are like even remotely good teams for the most part. You could say Illinois is fine, but Illinois lost to everyone they played all year.
Shout out Luke.
Yeah,
Altmaier.
but I mean Texas, you know, they're not the craziest wins, but you beat the brakes off of an Oklahoma team who just blew out Alabama.
True.
And they're starting to pick it up towards the end of the year. We know you lost the game to Georgia, but Georgia is, you know, one of the top few teams in the country. You beat Vanderbilt in Vanderbilt, a place where Bama lost as well, a place where a couple of teams have been upset. You blew out Florida, 49-17, and Florida is looking like one of the better teams, you know, from that middle of the SEC on the upward track with DJ Lagway playing out of his mind. You know, their special teams, kick returning for touchdowns. You beat them 49-17.
Yeah,
you went in Arkansas, a hard place to play, and then blew out Kentucky. So, you know, you don't have all of the marquee ranked wins, but I do not have the same issue with Texas that I do with Penn State, because Penn State hasn't like played a team that I thought was really capable of beating them besides Ohio State, and then they just lost to Ohio State.
They
didn't score an offensive touchdown.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
So, but I do think Texas may have. I don't think they're out, but I think it gets to be an interesting conversation if you lose this week to A&M.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's even if we're not out, I question if we deserve it if we lose to A&M. You know, unless we're losing in like a 5th or 6th overtime, that's kind of anyone's ball game at that point, which I don't think we should be in that kind of a situation.
No, I think you blow them out, but
I think we do too. But
yeah, a loss there puts A&M in the conference championship, and then, you know, a loss in the conference championship leaves them with 4 losses, so they're probably not in. No. So they'll just like throw Texas maybe still in above a team they just lost to.
Or they throw Alabama above us. Or
that would be an interesting spot. I just think Alabama's done. The way they ranked them.
I think they should be, but the way that they have them at 13 is really scary.
Kind of is. I don't know. I think South Carolina jumps them with a win over Clemson.
That would be crazy.
Like, hold on, let me pull up the South Carolina
because it's an out of conference game, so it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it means everything in terms of like being a ranked team, but like
yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, they played each other, right? So South Carolina lost to Alabama around mid-season, but it was in Bama and it was a 2-point game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really think they'll use the head-to-head tiebreaker to kind of justify it. Bama doesn't really have good wins. Like, I mean, let me pull up Bama's schedule real quick. I know it's not that bad, but
being Mizzou is good.
Oh wait, just kidding. They beat Georgia. I totally forgot about that.
Also,
that was the only game that they were super impressive. It was only in the first half. So I guess, you know, it could get interesting with the South Carolina win over Clemson. What team they would rank higher? I totally forgot about the Georgia game. I don't know how I did that.
Do you think LSU is a good one for them, or does not really matter because
not anymore? LSU's just fallen off a cliff. I mean, the Missouri win doesn't really mean a whole lot in my mind. LSU wins whatever. You know, beside Georgia early in the season is a big win, but it'll determine, you know, when South Carolina beat Clemson would be a week out from the final rankings. They beat Georgia, you know, months before, and then blew a lead to them. And then as of recently, Alabama's just been, you know, looking very, very desolate with a blowout loss like that to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's
Georgia doesn't
embarrassing.
have a loss like that.
Yeah.
Georgia has scored touchdowns in every game. Bama was blown out 24-3 against an unranked Oklahoma. So I think that should kind of kick them out, but it is Alabama.
Yeah,
And we
I mean,
know-
they love Alabama.
We know what ESPN and all the cabal over there loves to do with Alabama.
SEC teams.
With
be
SEC
honest.
teams. Yeah, well, this year
And now Big Ten.
feels
Now
like
Big
Big Ten
Ten,
this year
but-
too. But yeah, overall, I think pretty good rankings.
Yeah,
not-
as little qualms as I've had in the past 3 weeks.
Yep.
So, you know,
Agreed.
that
100%
we'll take it.
agree.
We'll
yeah,
take it.
I go Tigers. Hopefully, we beat South Carolina. I could not have imagined an at-large bid even being possible after
Yeah,
the loss
I
to
know.
Louisville. I was just so upset, and like we just ruined our season. But I think there's a
amazing how
couple
things played
paths we
out.
can go this way. So hopefully we get it done. I love that they've opened the door for us. But overall, good rankings, and we got a real exciting week of college football coming up. So stay
Hell
locked in
yeah.
with us. We're posting a lot of videos. Drop a follow, drop a subscribe if you haven't, and let us know what you think in the comments. What team is ranked too high? Who do they leave out? And how do you think this plays out?
Let us know your thoughts.
We'll see you guys next week.